What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another live broadcast of the Engadget Podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devendra Hardwar. Today, I'm joined with our Deputy Editor, Nate Ingram. Hey, Nate.
Hey, Dev. How's it going?
Way all the other end. I'm okay. And sandwiched in between us is our podcast producer, Ben Ellman. Hey, Ben.
Hey, if you sound apocalyptic, if you hear the sound of apocalyptic sounding thunder, everything's fine. I just happen to be in Florida.
For sure. I mean, yeah, happy to be somewhere warm. It's getting warmer down here. Thank you all for joining us. You may notice some audio sync issues right now. We're working on it, but we just want to, get the show started because I figure most people just open up this window and like have us on in the background, So we are working on that right now. Thank you all so much for joining us. Let's welcome the people who are here this morning. Let me see. We got some regulars like Jonathan Anderson.
Yeah.
Mark Dell. Hello. Dhruv Karmarkar. Hello, Kevin Sellers. Hello, Root TK.
Cornell Waugh, who is also a regular and always has really good insights. Chiming Chung.
Mm-hmm.
Some guy named Nathan Ingram.
I don't know who that
I don't know
is.
who that is.
What's
should
up,
he
chat?
be banned?
Probably. Thank you all for joining us. And just so you guys know, we're going to be talking about all the Apple stuff we didn't really have a chance to discuss last week, and that is the Studio Display. My review of that just went up, and Nate reviewed the iPad Air. And we'll talk about some general Apple stuff. We've also got some news to dive into. Sherlyn is still on vacation. If you're wondering where Sherlyn is, we have not kicked her out. She will be leading the podcast over the next month or so because I'll be off on paternity leave. So I'll be away. Sherlyn will be here to play. Don't worry, folks. The podcast will go on. How are we doing this morning, folks?
So just to shout it out once more, Mark Dell, chat hero, says, I thought my Bluetooth headphones were just being laggy. Glad you called it out. So once again, yes, we are having a small audio sync issue. It's like a little more than a second or something. So please just bear with us. We'll try to see if we can make it better. If not, it'll be a throwback to over-the-air radio.
Minimize the window and just do yourself a favor.
Do your thing. Well, hang out in the chat, which is what I do. Is I pop out the chat and I just like sit there and I see what people are doing. So you could do that, folks. And also,
pop out chat, listen.
We'll have the high quality version of the audio too on the actual podcast feed. So there's all that.
Yep.
If you're joining us for the first time, this is our live recording of the show. So you'll see us like doing all the preparation and everything. We can't really talk to the chat as we're having discussions, but we will try to make some time for some Q&A, so just stick around for that. And if you drop questions into the chat, Ben will be keeping an eye on things. Maybe we can get to them. We've got a fun new segment this week too, so it'll be interesting to dive into.
Okay, so since we weren't able to do it before the show, everybody, including the chat, gets to sync with us. So I'm going to count down from 3. At the end of 3, Dev, Nathan, myself, and the chat can all clap at the same time. So 3, 2, 1. All right, a bit of silence. All right, silence over. Let's get the show started.
Woo! Okay. We all good to go? Recordings look good. My recording looks good. Okay. Let's go in 3, 2, 1. What's up, Internet, and welcome back to the Engadget Podcast. I'm Senior Editor Devendra Hardwar, and this week I'm joined by Deputy Editor Nate Ingram. Hey, Nate.
Hey, Dev. How's it going?
It's going good. We're going to be talking about Apple. There's a bunch of stuff we didn't get to talk about last week because, there's so many things we can review at once. So I will be diving into the Apple Studio Display. Nate reviewed the iPad Air. We've got a bunch of news to dive into and a fun Ask Engadget question. So stick around for all of that. As always, if you're enjoying the show, please be sure to subscribe to the Engadget Podcast on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice. Leave us a review on iTunes or, whatever platforms, but iTunes is the best. And you could drop us an email at podcast@engadget.com. We typically do a live stream of the show on Thursdays around 10 a.m. Eastern, so you can join us on our YouTube channel for that. Join the chat, talk with us. You can see some behind-the-scenes action. We do some Q&A, and occasionally we'll show off some gear. Let's talk about the Studio Display. Apple's Studio Display. I I have so many feelings about this, Nate, and you are more of a Mac head than I am. So my review is up. My review's title is Apple Studio Display for Mac loving eyes only. It's the best Apple monitor for consumers, unfortunately. So I've got issues. Like, I think it is a nice looking 5K panel. It is a well designed screen. It is kind of your only option for a sub $5,000 Apple approved, Apple made display, which can go really nicely with the new Mac Studio, which I really liked last week. Be sure to check out our episode and discussion about that. But this feels like a display that was made 5 or 6 years ago, right? It is basically the same screen that was in the 5K iMac from 2014. It's a little brighter. It's 100 nits brighter, I believe. But otherwise, like, the panel tech is the same. The resolution is the same. I don't even need resolution. I just want like better panel tech. This is an IPS LCD, which is fine, but it has a single backlight. There's no like local dimming zones like you'd find on modern TVs or any other modern monitor. There's certainly no mini LED support, which is the really cool technology that we saw on the new MacBook Pros. And I think that's on the Pro XDR screen too.
It's on the iPad Pro too, the big one.
Yeah, it's on the iPad Pro. So let me just talk about that, because backlighting is important.
You care about this more than most people, I feel like, too. Though.
Everybody should care about this. This is the entire point. This is why you buy a new TV. Okay.
More so than resolution.
Before I get too deep into that, Nate, like, what do you saw my review? You've seen like the general consensus on this. As somebody who likes Mac hardware, like, what is your overall takeaway on this monitor?
I think that like your headline hits the nail on the head. It's for Mac fans. I am a Mac fan. I typically use Macs for all personal and work stuff. So I'm like in the target audience, and the simplicity and feature set is very cool. Mm-hmm. But the price is out of whack with the quality display you get.
Yeah.
Like,
so you recognize that. You recognize it's not a good value. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember the old, like, Apple used to sell a 27-inch Thunderbolt display that was similarly like nice, like one plug. It had a built-in charger for your laptop. It was like the 27-inch iMac at the time, which I think was a quad HD screen, which is pretty nice for the early 2010s. And it was about like $800, I think. So still expensive compared to other like similar panels, but not, twice as much as this, this display is. So even as somebody who loves Mac hardware and can see the benefits of this, I wouldn't buy it. And if I'm not going to buy it, I don't know who will.
So you like Mac hardware, but not enough to like pay. This is truly an Apple tax device where you're paying a lot more compared to what's on the market right now, just for Apple niceties, basically. And this is what's really confounding to me, right? This thing starts at $15.99. If you want the nano texture glass, right? Where's the additional price for that? That's $300. If you want a height adjustable display, the ability to move the monitor up and down, $400.
Yeah.
So if you want all of those things put together, that's a $2,300 monitor. That's insane to me for what you get with this thing. There are some cool new features, like it has an A13 processor. It has a built-in webcam, which is not that great, but at least it's built in. It has a really nice speaker system, and we'll talk more about like what that A13 processor means. But as a screen, guys, as a thing you look at all day, it looks nice objectively. But I was talking about the backlighting thing. Older LCD screens, older TVs from like 10 years ago had like a single backlight, right? It was either on or off, and that was fine, but it wasn't great for like black levels and contrast. And you really see that here, where the darkest black you can get from the screen is like a gray, like a inky gray. It's really noticeable too, because the entire like large bezel around this monitor is pure black, so you can see
there's that contrast between the two. Yeah.
And it's not great. It's not great at all. So by adding more local dimming zones and basically more zones of backlights throughout screens, that's how TV makers and monitor makers have been able to like localize that brightness. So for a sunset or something, you can put a little more bright stuff there, so you don't have to blow up the whole screen and kind of like put everything out of wax. That's what enables HDR, on newer 4K TVs. That's what gets you like that nice, realistic looking lighting. There's none of that here. It's just a single backlight zone. So it feels ancient in a way. And it's weird because Apple has really spoiled us, I think, with a lot of the new Retina displays. Like I upgraded to the iPhone 13 Pro. I want the Pro Motion. I wanted a higher refresh rate. That's not on this screen. It's still stuck at 60 hertz, so perfectly fine. But if you do a lot of scrolling, you'll notice it is not as smooth as other things. Is that something you care at all about, Nate?
So I think that you're getting into an interesting place here, because I think that the people that this monitor will appeal to are people who aren't quite as like you're very, very hardcore in terms of your like visual fidelity knowledge, and you appreciate.
I don't think
stuff.
You have to be. I think like
you don't. But I think that the people who would be interested in this monitor are more interested in it being this all-in-one solution with these features that complement their Mac really nicely, and that's fine. But like and so I'd agree that like things like fast refresh rates, and HDR. I mean, maybe less of it an HDR thing. Like obviously this monitor isn't meant for gaming, and that's fine. I wouldn't have expected it to be.
It's meant for movie production. It's meant for video production.
That's the other thing I was going to say.
HDR is like essential these days. Yeah.
Like it's the kind of thing that like somebody who bought like the entry level MacBook Pro, the 14-inch model, they spent $2,000 on a nice laptop, and they want a really nice display to pair with it. Like that's the market there. But I feel like they like really shot themselves in the foot in terms of like pairing this thing with the Mac Studio, which is obviously a super powerful, super compelling desktop computer, and it needs a monitor to like match that. And this just doesn't seem to be it if you're, like you said, a professional working on video production, that sort of thing. Is color sensitive, right? I do photography. I like it to look good, but I'm not like making movies here. So that's why I'm like, oh, this would probably be a fine display for me, but I'm not going to spend $1,600 on just fine when I can spend $800 on this like this delightful 32-inch Dell 4K screen that like looks great and I think has HDR and so forth. So
it's confounding. Like the market, like maybe they're like, okay, if you're a real professional, you're going to spend $6,000 and get the Pro XDR 6K screen, which is a beautiful like 32-inch monitor. But I think that's out of reach for a lot of like people who aren't working in like production houses or something. I think it's more the imbalance between like what Apple has been putting in a lot of their devices, their Pro devices. It feels really weird to be looking at the screen and seeing the price they're charging, seeing the extra fee for just height adjustability, which is a basic feature. Like Dell offers it on pretty much all of their monitors, even their like cheap $200 to $300 monitors. So that's not like something you should pay extra for. If you want to change the stand down the line, by the way, you can't. So if like you change your mind, you just want to like physically mount this studio display, you can't remove the stand. So you have to choose the base mount option from the start.
Really?
You have to choose the height adjustable option from the start. That is ridiculous too, because people's workflows change all the time.
Right. You move. So, you want a new setup.
You move. Yeah, you get a new desk. You want to like get a monitor arm or something. So that is really where my criticisms come in. I see a lot of like much harsher reviews of this thing, so I'm not even being like completely negative here. Like I think if you're an Apple head and you don't care about what you're missing here, which is a shame, because I think it really grinds my gears when I see this happening. And to me, this is even more annoying than the like $1,000 stand for the Pro display, because those people will pay whatever. Those expenses are expense to their companies. It's not a personal price. But this is a monitor meant for normal people to buy and to put on their desk and to put beside the Mac Studio. And it is just not as good. Like right now, I'm looking at Alienware's QD OLED 34-inch ultra-wide monitor. This thing, it's a beast. It is like the best gaming monitor you can get. It has a 175 hertz refresh rate. It has 1000 nits of peak brightness. It has actual HDR. It has OLED, so that means those pixels.
I'm getting excited.
$12.99.
All right,
it's expensive, but it's not $16.99. It's not $2,300, and it is a much more useful monitor. Dell has other things too for like artists and video professionals. I reviewed the 40-inch ultra wide, which is I believe under $2,000. I gotta double check that pricing, but that's a bigger screen, also has the same like color accuracy as the studio display, and just like more modern, better backlights. So basically I'm really annoyed with what Apple did here, and it feels like they don't understand, like they don't care what is happening in the rest of the market, and it really annoys me. That probably comes across in my review, but I hope I was fair there. Do you have any other thoughts on this thing,
I mean,
Nate?
I think it's very much coming across right now, which again, totally fair. And it's interesting because it seemed like the Mac Studio was such a logical computer. Like, and I think that, to give Apple credit, the trend in the last few years has been making a lot of smarter decisions around the Mac. They're clearly listening to the feedback they got mid last decade about, thin overheating laptops with no ports. And I think it's interesting that they're playing in the consumer monitor space again after getting out of it, because if this thing cost $1,000 and had all these nice features, great speakers, a built-in webcam, the A13 in there, which might allow for some like fun trickery down the line, then it would be a lot more compelling of a product, because I wouldn't mind paying a bit of an Apple tax, but not a double priced Apple tax.
I could see paying like $1,600 to, if like the potential of this thing's A13 processor was actually, alive. People have noticed, there was one Twitter user who noticed that it has 64 gigabytes of storage.
That's pretty significant.
Like in the screen, because I think the way Apple just manufactures the A13s is like they probably have the storage, so it is cheaper just to keep building those chips or use the older chips rather than reorient their whole manufacturing process to get a 32 gigabyte storage or something even smaller in there. It just kind of makes sense. But that means like this thing is basically an iMac. Like it has storage, it has processing, it has like GPU circuitry. I could see a world where Apple had tried to make this like a smart display, right? Where if you didn't have any Mac attached to it, you could just like, you hit a button and you could do a FaceTime call, or you could AirPlay from any of your devices right to it, or you could just like do things with it, use it as like a speaker system, wirelessly. And I could see that happening down the line, but maybe through hackers, not really through Apple itself.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like the kind of thing they would necessarily enable, but it's really interesting that it's there. But your point about this basically being an iMac is really interesting, because the other thing I was going to mention is that at this price, $1,600, you could just straight up buy an iMac like with a slightly smaller screen, 24-inch screen, but it's a whole damn computer instead of just a monitor. Right?
And I reviewed the new M1 iMac, and it's really nice. It's really thin. You can move it around more easily. The iMac is actually thinner than this monitor, which is just a monitor. They also killed the 27-inch iMac as well. So
I'm surprisingly bummed about that, because I feel like that was, again, a sweet spot. The display size is nice. If you want something a little bigger, the 24-inch, I have a 24-inch monitor on my desk, and it feels like a little smaller than I'd like. All this monitor discussion is definitely making me want to buy something nice and new. But it won't be this Apple display.
One thing I haven't mentioned is that this is a pixel perfect Apple screen. So like, because of the way macOS scales the resolutions and everything, like having a 5K screen from Apple means like everything shows up the way it's supposed to. Whereas if you were to plug into like a 4K monitor into your Mac, like there are some issues there. Like you have less usable desktop space. You couldn't like view a full 4K video while also viewing some of your timeline, which you can't do in a 5K monitor. So there are certain things that Mac heads, and I guess I'm a PC guy, or I'm a platform agnostic guy too, because I have to use both. I have to review both. And I have issues with the PC side of things. I love like Apple's ability to like combine hardware and software, but I think more issues with Apple's like just what they do and what they force upon their users. And there aren't many other choices, right? There is the LG Ultrafine 5K monitor, which came out several years ago. Everybody hates it because it's like a piece of junk. It's like it's cheap plastic. They fall apart. Everybody who's bought one, like I've seen, have talked about like having to return them or get them repaired. So
how's the panel on that though, compared to like this one?
I mean, I don't know about compared to this one. I hear the LG panel was pretty much the same as the one on the iMac, so probably pretty similar.
Yep.
But you're not getting a nice metal case and all the other like Apple niceties.
Right.
And that's a weird thing. It's just it is confounding to me. I wish there were more options. I wish the pricing was more fair. I wish Apple treated their consumers better. But that's just me. But Nate, you reviewed the iPad Air, and I feel like that is a device where it's like, okay, I see what Apple's doing here is actually much better and much more consumer friendly in many ways, right?
And I'm going to pull Steve Jobs and be like, I happen to have it right here.
Yay.
Yeah, it is a great tablet. So first of all, though, you kind of have to say, like, do I like using an iPad for starters? If you don't care about tablets, then obviously it's not for you. The software hasn't changed in a significant way to make you say, oh, like maybe I'll, use this as a desktop or laptop replacement now. You certainly can. I've had an iPad Pro 11-inch for almost 2 years now, and I can do most of my job on it. But I mostly like it as like a couch computing device is kind of how I put it, like a casual after work, browse the web, do my emails. It's great for when you travel for videos and music and reading and that sort of thing. And if you want to do more, that you certainly can, because the apps that most developers make for the iPad are still really, really good. But as for this Air specifically, it starts at $600 and it has an M1 processor in it. And that's pretty crazy if you ask me, considering that chip is also in all of that. It's in the iMac we just talked about. It's in the MacBook Air. It's in the 13-inch MacBook Pro. It's in the iPad Pro. And now it's in the iPad Air, which is by far the cheapest device of all those that have an M1.
They only added it to the iPad Pro like last fall too, right? So it wasn't that long ago.
It was it was actually a year ago this spring. So it was exactly a year ago. Yeah.
Gotcha. So that's a pretty big time. I think the Mac Mini gets to be like under this price, So but that is wild, right? The M1 chip is basically the M1 chip. Not much changes. So now they can like take that thing and stuff it in a tablet, put a screen on it. And do you notice any like speed improvements over like the previous gen iPad Air or other ones?
So like I said, I've got an 11-inch iPad Pro that doesn't have the M1. It has the A12Z.
So that's a 2019.
It's a 2020, but the A12Z is only a slight variant on the A12X, which was in the 2018 iPad. So it's getting like a little old. And the M1 benchmark wise just smokes it, like on single core, multi-core. It's way faster. And in terms of actual use, I was surprised to find like basic stuff, like just like using the Apple Mail app, like deleting all my email, just like snaps in a way that like my old iPad doesn't feel old, but it does now. So like things like that, just like switching tabs, loading up browser tabs is super fast. Any app loading is super fast. I was using Lightroom to edit some like raw photos. I took review photos of it in our office, and then I imported them directly into the iPad into Lightroom using a USB-C camera dongle, and it uploaded them to the Adobe Creative Cloud, and then I had it instantaneous. It's super fast, but I'd say that if you have the previous iPad Air, which came out in the fall of 2020 with the A14, you're not going to get quite the same, like surprisingly faster, because that was already super fast too. The difference though is that I think with an M1, you can like buy this Air now and expect it to last 5 years, basically.
Yeah, the M1 is like a miracle chip. Like, go back to my reviews of like the MacBook Air and everything. Like, the amount of power in that thing was blowing away like all Intel and AMD chips at the time with no fan. Like, just astounding. Does your iPad Pro have ProMotion, Nate?
It does, yes. Okay. So that's like the big thing that's missing from the screen on this one. To be honest, though, I didn't end up missing it too much. I know people are really wild for high refresh rates. You said you got the iPhone 13 Pro, which has 120 hertz.
When I'm 120 hertz ProMotion, and it's like I notice it when I'm scrolling Twitter or when I'm doing stuff. Like my eyes feel better because they're like being massaged by the screen rather than like having to like catch up with like the like hiccups between with a normal 60 hertz display, basically.
Yeah, and I still notice it, but I was surprised at how quickly I stopped thinking about it on the iPad Air. So like I missed it at first, but I think honestly at this point that's about the only thing that's really separating the 11-inch Pro from the Air. And so it makes me wonder, I feel like, either Apple will have to they might discontinue the 11-inch iPad Pro altogether and just leave the Pro being the large screen device that it is, or they'll have to do something to differentiate it because it uses the same accessories. It's got essentially the same screen. It's got the exact same internal hardware.
Right. You could plug in the same keyboard attachment, right? Which is I'm really intrigued by too. Like I want like a nice light writing machine where not much else is happening, so I can just focus. So like, have you done that with your iPad Pro?
That's probably the thing I do with it the most, and that's why I wrote the whole iPad Air review on the iPad Air. I wrote the rest of those stuff I've been working on during that review time frame on it. It's really great to just like sit down, bang out 1,000 words without thinking about it. It's a lot easier to like go into single focus mode and ignore notifications because of the way multitasking works. You're not going to have like layers and layers of windows going. You'll just have your writing canvas and maybe like one other, like a Safari tab for research or whatnot. But yeah, it's really good for that sort of thing. It is tricky because the keyboard is great. It costs a mind-blowing $300.
$300. Oh my god!
It's funny. It's the same problem we're talking about with the monitor, where like sometimes you'll see Apple do something that's like a pretty reasonable value, like an iPad Air with an M1 chip for $600, and then you have a keyboard that literally costs half as much as it, and or like you'll have a monitor that costs the same as an iMac, and it's just
$30 or $50 more than that keyboard. You get the base iPad, which and you could do a lot with that too.
You can.
I've been eyeing a new iPad for a while. Like first it was the iPad. Was it the new iPad Mini?
Yeah, from last fall.
From last fall, which is adorable and certainly very, very powerful. But this is like price wise, not that much of a difference. I think like I could carry around this easily. It would be more useful for like big screen comics and stuff, and having that keyboard attachment. But now I'm like, I really like ProMotion. I really like having that high refresh rate. So now it's like, do I just like suck it up and pay a little bit more to have a screen that that doesn't bother me as much?
That you'll actively love. Yeah, I think you'll actively be happy about it. And I'll say at this point, before this Apple event at the beginning of March, when people are talking about the new iPad, it was either going to be the Air or the iPad Pro, since they refreshed the Mini and the base iPad in the fall. I expect that the iPad Pro will get an update at some point this year, but so it might be worth waiting for. But I'd say for like
just give me a discount on last year's. That's all I need.
Well, go find a refurb maybe.
Yeah.
That's not a bad idea. They do.
This is how I buy expensive hardware, is just go refurb, baby.
Yeah, it's good.
The best way to go. And did you try Sidecar at all, Nate?
I did. So Sidecar is like, using it as an external display. And right now I'm actually using the new feature in iOS 15.4 and Mac OS 12.3, which is the continuity, or I guess I'm forgetting what it's exactly called, but it's where you can use one keyboard hooked up to your Mac and also use it on the iPad. So I'm doing that right now, where I've got my keyboard in front of me and my mouse in front of me, and I'm going back and forth between my
universal control. That's
universal control. Thank you.
Which is, it's wild to me to see Apple just like implement this right now, because in like 2005, when I was working in IT, there were like several open source projects that were like, we could just sync up all your devices, Mac, PC. So I had like a lampshade iMac on my desk, and I had a PC to my right, and I was able to, with this thing, move one keyboard and mouse between them, and even do like some like copying and pasting, because like they were like server access and everything. So like that was pretty wild. Like, and to have that like almost 20 years ago at this point, my god, but to have that like actually finally natively built into something from Apple of all companies is kind of wild to me. Would you consider this, like, if you already have a MacBook of any kind, would you consider this to be like just the good accessory iPad, because you can get Sidecar? It's a lot lighter than even the MacBook Air, right? So like it's a good thing to travel with in many ways. If you it's an ideal, and that's kind of one of the things I've liked about iPad since the beginning, is like it's a great travel device. Like obviously if we're going to a big trade show, we need our full setup. That's fine. You bring your laptop. But when I am traveling for myself, which I haven't done much of the last 2 years, but hopefully someday again soon, it's a great kind of like little personal computer to have all my stuff on it, like my own personal stuff. And I'm using, it's really cool, the universal control thing. Like I've got a Bluetooth keyboard and a mouse hooked up to my laptop, and I'm just using them right now on my iPad. Although I will say, somebody on Twitter, I don't remember who, but they said that while universal control works really well, there's almost no situation in which it's better than just doing Sidecar, which is using the iPad as an external display. That's true.
Because I'm like, okay, what do I have open on here? I've got like our show notes, and I've got Slack on my iPad, and I could have just had my Windows from my Mac over there doing the same thing. But
that's true. But maybe you want to handle an iPad app instead of,
right,
a Mac app. Like,
right.
Does Instagram have an iPad app yet? Is that the whole controversy?
They sure don't. No,
they sure don't. Something else that doesn't exist on Mac OS but does exist on iPad OS.
Yeah.
Like Netflix, maybe. Like,
yeah, that's not a bad call.
Window, but yeah, there's no Mac Netflix app. So there you go. Who do you think this iPad is for, Nate? Because I really like the base iPad. That thing is super cheap. Like, does like 85% of like what this computer does, and I think for most users that is just the one to get. But who needs the iPad Air, you think?
Yeah, it's really tricky because I agree with you about the base iPad being like a super good value. Obviously, for $330 you get,
if you've never had an iPad before, just get that.
Yeah,
you will be very happy.
Yeah. And I reviewed that one last fall. I was able to, again, do most of what I do on the iPad Air, my iPad Pro with that device. It just doesn't feel as nice. It feels old. The
keyboard dock, the keyboard accessory does not work on that, right? They have
not that there's a second keyboard. It doesn't have a trackpad. So this keyboard that I'm using has a trackpad, which makes a huge difference in how much work I'm able to get done on it. Like if I'm editing text documents and whatnot, it's much easier to use a trackpad than keep on poking the screen. But it does have a keyboard case, which is like still pretty pleasant to type on.
I know Logitech makes a couple too. So
yeah, they do. I think Logitech makes one with a trackpad, I believe. So yeah, this is for people who, like me, like Apple stuff, are willing to pay a little more for nicer performance, better hardware. Design, not this kind of like old stale design, and it's definitely more future proof, right? Like this thing will remain nice and fast much longer than the basic iPad. It's the one that I would recommend most people get, assuming that they can afford it. And again, it's not an insignificant price difference, more than $200 between them. But I'd say that if you are interested in using it for anything more than like sitting on the couch and kind of browsing, messaging, if you want to like get into more like creative applications, that sort of thing, then this is a good upgrade to get.
Gotcha. Like a good laptop replacement if you have like something else at home, maybe like if you have a desktop or something. So hey, if you want to be creative, check out the iPad Air. Thank you so much, Nate.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a break and we could do some Q&A.
Yeah.
Or do we just keep going?
No, let's take a little break for Q&A because I've been banking a bunch of questions. I don't have a mic stand down here, so I'm gonna
I'm
the mic down for just a
second. We're not hearing a ton of like mic noise.
Yeah, you're just holding that?
Yeah, I'm just holding it. It's just my hand.
Good for you.
You specialize. I put all my stats in hand steadiness, I guess.
For sure. Oh, Mark Dell, shout out to Mark Dell. The software was called Synergy. Synergy was this open source project from like 2005-ish for uniting multiple things. Pretty wild. We've been around too long, guys. Every time I think back to like how far back I've seen progress, I feel very old.
Yeah, so we had some comments. One was from Bryant Mitchell when we were talking about the Mac Studio display. They said, this monitor has fans. Why does a monitor need fans? Mark responded saying, the brightness can create a lot of heat, of course. It can't maintain high brightness without cooling. So, yep, that makes sense. Love when the chat
I didn't hear any fans, by the way. Like, it's I ran that thing at high brightness. I didn't hear like any noticeable fan noise. So fans can be pretty quiet. Yeah,
I had no idea it had fans. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that common for like high-end monitor stuff?
No, I don't believe so. It's just, it's a computer. It's not a monitor. It's a computer.
It's a computer that Apple doesn't let be a computer. So how long do we think is it going to take until someone makes a like Hackintosh iMac out of the Mac Studio display?
Give it a month or two. I don't think iFix has done their teardown yet, have they?
Oh, that'll be interesting to see. I don't recall seeing that either, but that would be super.
There's gonna be a lot of interesting tweaking too, because like people have found the Mac Studio, if you tear that apart, the SSD that's built into it is software locked, so you can't just like plug in another one. But I'm sure somebody will hack a way to make that work.
Yep.
Hackintosh, a word that I haven't said in a long time.
I think people are still doing it though.
People are doing it.
So if like if like other ARM chips continue to get better, if we have keep having Windows on ARM progressing, could Hackintosh become a thing again? Take Mac OS on ARM, put it onto Windows on ARM chips.
Probably.
Okay.
But ARM is like it is a lot harder to get that stuff running. I just saw a developer get like a new Intel NUC and just like do a traditional Intel Hackintosh type thing. So I think it'll be really interesting to see. Jiffer points out hacking the Mac Silicon is not really a thing right now, which is true. But we will find backdoors.
I think that's only because not many like big tech companies have shifted over to M1s quite yet. Like I think they're currently in the process. I was reading some story about how like Salesforce bought a ton of M1 Pro laptops for their workforce, and so I think the ball is going to start to get rolling, and if they're interacting with this platform at work, they're going to say, oh, I think I might be able to do this, and they'll get their own M1 because no way in hell you're going to code a personal project on a work laptop that then they own it. But I think the development community is only getting started.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's very exciting.
So we've got another comment from Buckley or Buckley. It's a couple U's there. I know it isn't a one-to-one comparison, but I do feel that the 24-inch iMac is a better buy for most people than the Studio Display.
Yep, for most people. And then you have to define who is like, what is the audience you're talking about? I think for general users, like people who are like, yeah, I know how to use a Mac, but I don't care about having a nice big screen, and they're not. The Studio Display is for people who are buying the Mac Studio. Basically, that is who it's for. So if you don't need the power of the Mac Studio, which alone costs $2,000, then just get the iMac. Like that's why that exists.
But then again, you said like the Studio Display is for the Mac Studio, but the people who buy the Mac Studio might be working on like professional grade film editing, and that's Studio Display doesn't give you the professional grade film editing stuff.
Then you just can easily spend $6,000 or $7,000 if you want to stand with the Pro Display XDR. It's so simple.
I think it's 6,000 with
the stand. It just works.
6,000 with the stand. Yeah, let's be fair here.
I have no.
No, I mean like the iMac makes so much sense, and it's so much easier to forgive the faults that Dev points out in the display, single backlighting, lower refresh rate. When you're talking about a $1,500 computer that does everything versus a $600 display that's supposed to really be focused on, like the fact that those two LCDs are comparable is just like completely out of whack, right?
For sure. So this is what I was thinking of. So the Pro Display XDR standard glass, $5,000. If you want the nano texture glass, which we did not talk about, which like basically refracts light even more if you're in a bright light environment or right by a window, that's another $1,000. So if you want nano texture plus any stand, that is another $1,000. Yeah, that's $7,000, baby. Gotta love it.
Crazy.
Gotta love it.
And so like when you were talking about like similarly priced very good other displays, a couple of people agreed with Devindra, saying that Dell displays are really solid. I think it was Dude Named Charlie who said that Dell displays were really solid. Buddy 305 Love also said, don't forget LG and Sony 42-inch 4K OLED TVs can also double as monitors, and they're both in the range of $1,400.
Yeah, they certainly can.
I just saw Jiffer in chat has a really good point too, that if you want a good screen with your Mac, just get a mini and get a really nice display, and forget the iMac too, because the mini is even cheaper and it's basically the same as the iMac, and then you can pick your screen, right?
All I wanted was a mini with an M1 Pro. They'll do that quietly. They just don't want it of anything other than a TV monitor. Sure. So that could be in my future. And so thank you, Buddy 305 Love, for suggesting one.
Yeah, certainly. Big monitors are a thing too. And Dell, like that thing I talked about, the 40-inch ultra wide from Dell, which I think is more useful than a TV, because TVs tend to be too tall if you're really close to them. So having a slimmer less short, but still as wide as a 40-inch TV. That is super useful for
Did
timelines.
Did you review that, Devinger?
Yep,
Or
I reviewed that. Yeah,
okay,
a couple of years ago.
nice.
So then we've got Truth Seeker saying that when we were talking about iPads, they said iPad Air 5 has some QC issues. Check on Amazon reviews. The back panel tends to flex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just heard about that yesterday or the day before, and I believe people who are saying there's an issue. This feels basically the same as my, well, I guess I haven't tried bending it too much. I didn't I didn't run into any reliability concerns with the hardware. I'm sure it's not everybody's, but it is definitely something to watch out for. That's a really good shout, actually.
Because when I travel with any tablet, like it is in like one of those like tablet spots in my book bag. So it's like if it flexes at all, like that baby's dead, basically. So yeah, you want to have something sturdy there. All right, I think we can move on.
Yeah, we're done with all the comments that I banked. So yeah, let's move to other news.
Go. Let's move on to some other news. And weird thing happened this week. Several weird things, actually. Snap, the company behind Snapchat, bought a brain-computer interface startup called NextMind. And NextMind. And have you played around with any of the brain interface stuff? Like, have you, Nate, at all?
No, I haven't. This is foreign territory for me. It's interesting, and at the same time, I'm like, what are they going for at this point? I mean, I think it's probably a very forward-looking acquisition to some degree, right? Because this is not really like common consumer tech yet.
It's not. I mean, we've only seen like demos of this stuff. Looks like NextMind's thing looks like a headband that straps around your head, and the whole idea is that you can just think about something and it can track your brain synapses to like control a mouse monitor or a mouse pointer, or just like make selections on a screen. Certainly for Snap's AR glasses, it could be interesting, don't you think?
Yeah, except that the only thing that I'm thinking about is that I think the spectacles thus far have all been like pretty like standard looking glasses, right? And this like would have to require more or more obtrusive hardware would be my guess. So again, like this might not be the kind of thing we're going to see like imminently, but yeah, it feels like the kind of like the acquisition where they're going to like use the tech and like bring the people on board to like do something interesting rather than just like start offering this as something in the short term.
Yeah. It just seems like they have a lot of money and they can start experimenting with this stuff. And really, I think everyone's like, okay, we have some technology. The race for the perfect AR glasses is pretty much on. Like we know Apple's working on something. Facebook is being very loud about this stuff too. And Snap has produced, they've been producing glasses hardware for a while. I've not been a huge fan of them, but they exist and everyone's exploring this. So if even if it was like a slight wraparound glasses or something, or if it could use like the arms to like detect some brain interface stuff, that would be kind of interesting. But then I'd be really worried about like, okay, what are you tracking? What other information are you getting from me?
Yeah, I'd be more inclined to like let Snap do this than Facebook personally, or than Meta. But and I like the fact that Snap is like being very experimental as a company in this regard. Like they could have just kind of been content to be like a social app that was pretty popular, but they're sort of pushing for something different. And whether or not it turns into anything, obviously TBD. But acquisitions like this like are pretty interesting.
I don't really hear people talking about Snapchat like all that much anymore either. Like with the rise of TikTok and everything, like I cannot remember the last time somebody has even referenced Snapchat next to me.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like it probably still has like a relatively loyal like installed base. Like I imagine if your social circle uses it a lot, then you're kind of like not locked in, but you're going to be more inclined to keep using it, right? But I don't know. Although I feel like we track their financials and their earnings, and when they report users, and I think they've still managed to keep growing a little bit. Don't quote me on that for sure, but they're not by any means dead as a social platform, but indeed with like the rise of TikTok, they're certainly like a second tier thing.
It's like it is a very different thing too. Ben is pointing out in our chat that high schoolers still love it, and sure, I'm sure. I just like among the high school people I know, like nobody's really talking about or excited about the buzz on Snapchat either.
How many high schoolers do you know?
I know I have family, unfortunately.
Fair.
Like
Okay.
I have family all around, so I end up talking about like what kind of tech are you using? What social networks are you guys into? Stuff like that. Do you think, Nate, like, is this something, these sorts of experiments, are these like investor pushes from Snap, or is this like the leadership? Like, I don't think investors want to experiment. Like, normally.
No, but there's also at the same time, like, they have to like, there's some like keeping up with the Joneses to this, right? Like, metaverse is a thing now, and so they've got to have their own, play for this, right? So I could see it coming a little bit from that angle, but no, I think it's like been in their DNA to just like do some kind of weird product experimentation like this. And they've, like you said, they've been doing AR for a bit already, so this is like a logical next step to some degree.
Yeah, I remember when the first spectacles were announced, we were like, what the hell is this? And like you could only buy it in like weird random pop-ups, and like that was a smart move just in terms of like buzz, because nobody was really doing that.
I think in setting expectations too, in terms of like what it's supposed to be. Art, you're making me laugh.
Next news. Okay. Another weird thing that happened this week, Apple apparently bought a UK credit startup called Credit Kudos. And this is just kind of a weird story to me because this has nothing really to do with the consumer side of things. I hear from what I've read, Credit Kudos, it's an open banking startup that exists to help lenders make better decisions. So basically to help Apple better to figure out like how financing will work for a particular person. That's according to the blockcrypto.com. Yeah, I could see that being useful. Like it's when I was a freelancer, right? And I certainly didn't have enough money to just buy a MacBook or something. The point where I could be like, okay, I can just get this MacBook Air. It was like the 2012 MacBook Air, and I can finance it, and I can afford the monthly fees. It was like 0% APR. I really appreciated how smooth that process was from Apple compared to like most other companies. Like, it wasn't really like I'm buying a credit card. I'm joining the Best Buy credit card or something. Like, it was a pretty simple loan process. Certainly, I feel like if Apple can better figure out if they're like okay to manage a loan or something and do that quicker, that helps Apple sell more stuff, and that helps like more people like get access to their hardware. So maybe that's a good thing. Thoughts, Nate?
Yeah, your point about how you financed something 10 years ago is super relevant because that's basically what they're doing with the Apple Card now. Like, if you want to finance Apple hardware now, they let you for 0%. You just do it with an Apple Card. And so, like, this seems like it would definitely play right into that in terms of, like, I think I saw either in our article or the one you referenced that I don't believe the Apple Card is launched in the UK yet, and they're saying this could be something that plays into it, right? So, yeah, I think if they used to do, like, I know for a while there was a Barclays MasterCard that they used for financing, same deal, 0% over a 6, 12, 24 months, depending on how much the purchase was. Pretty simple. Obviously doing it with Apple Card is simpler and gets you into their ecosystem there. So I think anything they want to do to like make that more sticky is certainly relevant here. But yeah, it is definitely a weird acquisition. We don't hear about them buying like banking startups too.
We don't really hear about their acquisitions at all. Like,
that's true.
It's very like every time Apple acquires a company, and when I've had to like report on this, it is a lot of like begging Apple, like, hey, is this a thing? Is this real? And then Apple will never say anything. And I think the confirmation here is that Credit Kudos website points to like Apple terms of use at some point. So that's kind of the big tell there. What do you think about the Apple Card, Nate? Like, I've not signed up for it, but it is an intriguing idea.
I mean, I think that credit cards are tough. I've just been recently trying to decide like what I wanted to use for a credit card, because I was like, I want something that gets me better travel points. Like again, like I want to go on vacation finally. So I had an Amazon card or Amazon Prime card, and I'm trying to get off of Amazon. So once I'm not a Prime subscriber, that card won't be very useful. So again, moving off of that.
I forgot they had a Prime card.
You get like 5% cash. You get 5% on Amazon purchases, which is like pretty good. But I don't want to be spending most of my money on Amazon anymore. So
that's how they get you. Yeah.
So the Apple one is good because I think you get 2% anywhere you use Apple Pay, and then 3% at Apple and like a bunch of other places. So like it's very simple. That's again, it is very Apple in that like you don't have to think about it too much. You get just straight cash refunds to your card, which is nice. But and I think it makes the wallet even more useful. Although, I think once you do you use Apple Pay? Like, do you have your credit cards?
I use it everywhere. Like Apple Pay is like super helpful, especially now when I don't want to like fish through my wallet. So around here, where I am in Georgia, like almost everywhere it takes Apple Pay for everything. And also PSA for everybody, never swipe your credit card at a gas station. There is a goddamn pandemic going on out there. Another pandemic of skimmers everywhere.
Really?
And this is a story maybe to dig into at some point, but I think gas station owners are like doing it themselves because there are like phantom charges that I've noticed in my area that go to other gas stations locally.
Oh my God.
So it's like, I paid $15 for gas. I remember paying that a week ago, but if they charge you a week or two later, you probably won't even notice it because you're like, I bought gas at some point.
Sure.
The only safe way to buy gas now, or really anything, is never swipe. You could use a chip reader. That's, I believe, harder to actually steal. But if you can tap anywhere, the safest way to do any transaction. Just a big PSA, because last time, every time something goes wrong, right, your credit card company sends you, basically says, "Hey, we detected fraud. All your cards are gone. We close all your cards."
Right. They immediately go into full, which I get, but at the same time, it's kind of like, oh, cool. Now,
and they'll send you a new one a week later.
Right.
And then there's always this period where it's like, okay, I got to change all my accounts. I got to change all this stuff. Anyway, big deal. Tap to pay if you can, folks. It's the safest way. But yeah, you had a broader point, Nate, about Apple Pay.
Oh boy, who knows what it was? But
I don't know.
I mean, I think that I think what I was going to say is that using like the Apple Pay with any card you want, be it a debit card or like another credit card besides the Apple Card, is really great. And so the Apple Card has some stuff that is nicer than that. But I think for the most part, it's really mostly worth considering if you want to finance a purchase from them. That's kind of where they're really pushing it now.
And they're still doing separate financing too, right? Like if you don't want to get the Apple Card, they're not.
I don't think so. I'm 99% sure they discontinued whatever they used to use, and now it's just if you want to finance something, you do it through an Apple Card.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they do, here's the monthly payment for 24 months or 12 months or whatever it is. And
I don't want to promote debt culture and whatnot. It is hard to get anything financed, but if you're just starting out or you cannot outlay all that money right away, 0%, financing for something is perfectly doable, and nothing to be ashamed of doing.
No. It's just when you get too many of those things going, and it feels like subscriptions, right? Like you've got too many.
Be careful.
I
think what I tend to do is okay, I've paid off this one thing, like an exercise machine or something. It's like, okay, we needed that, and now it's like, okay, I could do something else or just start saving that money. Anyway, moving on to our wild story of the week, and I don't know if the story has been changed at all. Have you seen the crazy Tesla jumping video from LA, Nate?
I watched it, and it's really kind of ridiculous. I feel like this story is the perfect intersection of everything that's horrible about the internet and internet culture and Tesla all rolled into one kind of gross sandwich.
It's so the video went viral of it was on TikTok, it was on a lot of other platforms of just this Tesla flying over this intersection in LA, which is known for if you go fast, you'll probably get a little air. The person driving that car did not take into account the sheer power of an EV, electric torque, which is insane if you floor it. And also the fact that Teslas are freaking heavy cars, super heavy. So if you crash into anything, you're gone. Once you land, from a big jump, that thing is falling apart. So the video shows this, it shows somebody driving over an intersection, crashing into several cars down the street and just I think running away. They haven't really confirmed who the driver is, but the weird thing, the reason I'm mentioning this is because there was this also other weird thing happening where Dirty Dom, Dominicus Ziglitis, I remember seeing this online too. he admitted it's like, oh yeah, it was me, and he showed footage of potentially him behind the wheel doing it.
Right.
And local news and stuff like got in touch with him, and like it was a big thing. Then he admitted in another video that it was all a prank, and he kind of staged it with his own Tesla and just like chopping up a video and like having friends like recreate the crowd too.
Don't believe everything you see, folks.
Just so wild. So his reveal video is just pretty crazy, and he certainly I believe his TikTok account was banned once like that thing was admitted. But this is a weird social media guy who was like social media chaser who was like doing this thing to get the clout that being so infamous would certainly get you. And also Alex Choi, another YouTuber who like apparently he posted a video of the crash. I think the news is that he helped arrange like people meeting up there to film that or something. He is related to this as well. We don't know what that person was thinking. So I there's a lot of things I love about like the open nature of YouTube and online social media, like, and how it's like made creators out of everybody. But there is so much like weird, like, hey, look at this crazy stunt we're doing. When I first started watching TikToks, a lot of people would just do like pranks on other people, which seemed like increasingly dangerous, and making people's lives hell because you get a little bit of social media juice. That part of all this is really annoying to me. But yeah, I feel like watching this whole story, I'm spiraling a bit, Nate. What is your thought?
My thought is, like I said, is that this is like this intersection of it's encouraging people's worst instincts, like you mentioned, like the TikTok kind of pranking thing. And then like, I'm just trying to imagine why you look at this video and say, like, I think I'm going to take credit for this like destructive thing. And like, I get it. Like, yeah, like maybe people will be like, oh my God, look at what this guy did. But like, did he not think like law enforcement was going to not come knocking on the door, for example? Like, oh no, it wasn't me now. Like, okay. Like, it's just,
it's not that hard to track to as a rented Tesla. So they're like immediately going to the person who rented it and being like, hey, so what's up here? Yeah.
Seems like and somebody probably stole, like ultimately what seems like probably happened is someone stole it. I'd have to guess.
I don't know. I don't. Yeah. I think the wilder thing is that somebody rented this thing and legit just wanted social media clout for doing this jump and did not realize like how crazy
it was going to destroy the car,
how crazy it is. And there is like a GoFundMe campaign for somebody whose car was destroyed as well, somebody's Subaru. So like to see people get together to try to help that person, because who knows how much insurance is actually going to cover. Do we need a new insurance item for
to
like
cover TikTok stunts?
Social media damage? Like damage in the event of social media, acts of social media
violence. Actually,
oh my God.
Yeah.
We probably will, to be honest. Let us know what you think about this story, folks. podcast@engadget.com.
Don't try it at home.
Don't try it at home. We want to do a quick Ask Engadget. Say that again. We want to do a quick Ask Engadget section with a question from Ben. Once again, we're helping Ben Elman, our producer, figure out a computer purchase, but this one is for family, right?
Yes, this is for family. This is not just for me.
But you are basically just using us as like as a personal like advice column. Now,
hey,
right?
no, okay.
This is what I live for. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but last week they were cyberbullying me into getting a new computer when I already planned on getting a new computer. It just wasn't fast enough for them.
Yeah. Have you gotten the new computer yet, Ben?
I have not ordered it yet because
let the cyberbullying commence.
Oh God!
Until you get it.
What'd you get?
A 16-inch MacBook Pro.
He has not gotten
M1 Pro. Yeah, but yeah, soon. It's like it's so close.
Just do it.
Anyway,
do it.
Okay, like let's get to this actual thing.
All right.
Yeah.
So the story is that I am staying with relatives, my uncle and his wife, and I'm like down here because they're about to sell their house here in Florida. They're going to be using the money that they get from this sale to buy a smaller home base, and then they're going to take to the road for months at a time with retiree trailer life.
Sounds great.
And so we were talking about like what they needed to do to outfit their situation. They're much more well-versed in trailers than I am. Like they have gotten their dream trailer already. They're figuring out the ergonomics for, how to put everything in the trailer and all that. But they asked me, like, can you help us with figuring out a important tech issue. They want a laptop that will work anywhere, so it can connect to cell service when it needs to. It can connect to Wi-Fi at like truck stops or campgrounds when it needs to. It might even be able to be a hotspot for other devices if they need to connect to the internet. So is there something that can do that? They like the idea of it being one box. So just like one laptop that can do all this stuff, that has as big a screen as possible.
As big a screen.
They can do video calls, directions, email, paying bills, streaming, all that stuff.
We have spent years like charting the rise of like cellular equipped laptops. There was a big push from Qualcomm to make like that a big thing on Windows, and like a lot of it just never happened. But from what I can see right now, the 2022 HP Spectre X360, I just reviewed the 14-inch model of that. There is a 16-inch version of that computer, which is about as it's about as big as like a 15-inch laptop. Beautiful screen, great laptop. There is supposed to be a 5G version of that computer coming, so I would recommend that. That is like if you want a really nice looking machine,
but it's not out yet.
It's not out like right away. Dell's Latitude 9520, which is one of their newer business laptops, also has a 5G modem, I believe, like as an option that you could put in there. So it's typically like business oriented notebooks that we're seeing getting this, because people just want to work everywhere. And yes, you could certainly like turn it into hotspot, but then that involves like, okay, you got to do some Windows settings. Like you gotta know how to like share that internet connection, and you better hope it works properly. I will say that so those are two good options if you just like one thing. But if you are really trying to live the mobile life, right, and you could maybe want to recreate like what you have at home, most of us have Wi-Fi routers at home, right? And through that Wi-Fi router, that is the gateway for all of your devices to get online and everything. And I think hotspots, and certainly 5G hotspots, are getting better. Like the whole point of 5G really is to like, for a lot of people, replace home internet. And like the networks haven't fully gotten there yet, but I think T-Mobile has several 5G hotspots. Their coverage is really, really good too, because they have better mid-band coverage than some others. So you can be relatively certain that you would have some sort of coverage. It wouldn't always be 5G. It maybe sometimes would be LTE, but a hotspot would, sure, you could connect any laptop to that, right? And you could connect your tablets to that, and you could connect any other device. Like you may have other things in your home. You may have like a streaming, you may have an Apple TV or something, a Roku device connected to a TV, a Switch. Like you have so many things. Sure, you could always just share it off of a computer, but that is kind of clunky. Like computers aren't great at running sharing internet to multiple devices at once. And also, if your computer is the sole like cellular device in your like on your in your RV, then if anything happens, like if it stops working, if you have any issues, like you got nothing, you've got no internet. So I feel like having combined functionality like that, it is a nice thing to have if it's like on top of having a hotspot, sure. So then you could leave the RV and like just be online wherever. But I think for a lot of people, and I have thought about this too, get a good hotspot, pay the monthly fees for that, and I think you'd be a lot happier. And then it works the way you would. You just join your Wi-Fi network as you typically would. I don't know if any RVs have hotspots built in, but I do know like there are a lot of cars that have hotspots, that you could just subscribe to as well. So that's an option.
I like the car hotspot idea. Obviously, you're not going to buy a car just for that.
It's rough.
But, yeah,
it's confusing because like I have one right now in my Pacifica hybrid, and it's like AT&T. So then I'd have to, start an AT&T account. You have to hope it all like works, and then it's a whole other. It's basically you're paying for another phone service account,
right.
And that's a whole thing. But if you were mobile, then maybe that would work out. Any thoughts, Nate, on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the hotspot is like definitely not something to be afraid of, because it limits. If you're trying to find something with 5G or LTE built in, like you're really limiting your search for only a few good models, the ones you mentioned.
You could get a hotspot and a used old computer and be very, very happy too.
You could get a Chromebook.
Or one of your
you would not
beloved Dell XPS models of the last couple of years.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. It seems like the way to go. Having some redundancy, like you said, having not just rely on that one thing. Opens up, you've got way more options there to find like the nice big screen video chat, movie watching laptop that you need. Don't be afraid of the hotspot.
Don't be afraid of the hotspot. It is the easiest thing to deal with. But also, if you want like a nice device with cellular, like an iPad would actually be a lot more useful than a laptop, I think, with built-in cellular.
Yeah, so talking about ease of use, these are folks who have spent their lives in the kitchen. So they know a lot about culinary and not that much about computers. And so they are really focused on something that's really easy to use. That's, I think, why they are drawn to the idea of just having one box for everything. If you have two boxes, if you have this T-Mobile hotspot, is resetting
Can they use your Wi-Fi router at home?
Well, they use their Wi-Fi router at home. So is it as easy to reset as your at-home Wi-Fi router? Is it really just turn it off and on?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the only hard part is like getting it set up with T-Mobile or whoever they end up going with. That's an annoying process. But yeah, beyond that, it's a little box that is spitting out cellular connectivity that you can connect to over Wi-Fi. If they know how to connect to Wi-Fi, it is as easy as it is at home. While you're driving, any device will have issues with cellular reception, so just be aware of that. Certainly, be sure to download movies and stuff if you want to like be driving and also enjoying something, because you're gonna have like reception issues as you're going through highways and under tunnels and stuff.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and I think my family will thank you also.
Thank you. And if you have a question, folks, we love answering questions here. So drop us an email at podcast@engadget.com and we'll do an Ask Engadget section just for you. Well, let's move on to what we've been working on. Nate, you said you had something quick you want to mention?
Yeah, I did. So earlier this week, Google officially announced that they're bringing Steam support to Chrome OS. So there's like a really early alpha of Steam running on specific Chromebooks, and I'm a Chrome nerd, and I also love Half-Life 2. So I'm like, I want to get this going. No, I think it's a great idea if they can make it work.
There are a lot of Steam games that don't require hardcore graphics too. So
right. There's like a lot of Linux support for Steam already, I believe, right? And that's basically what they're using here. And then there's the Proton compatibility layer, which I'm guessing is maybe not so good, but I've never tried that myself using a Proton to run Windows games on Linux, but I like the idea that they're going to try it. So I'm going to try and get my hands on a Chromebook that runs this Steam alpha and start playing around with it.
Is it just like the best Chromebooks right now? Like what?
Yeah, basically it's a Chromebook with an i5 and I think 8 gigs of RAM is required. Google says that 7 models are supported right now. But it's like, again, I think they weren't like ready to actually announce this, but somebody at GDC was giving a talk from Google and they like kind of spilled the beans on it. And so they're like, all right, we're going to like make it a little more official.
That's cool.
So, but yeah, it's early alpha. It's going to be janky. It's going to be buggy, but the list of games that they've tried and say that you should try, it's pretty long. It's like multiple dozens of games. Like The Witcher 3 is on there. If you have like the right hardware and run out the right graphics settings. So like, I don't know. It's interesting. I think that games is obviously one of the things that Chromebooks have been like totally unable to do. And now that there may be an option, like I think it's kind of cool. And Jiffer, they are not trash. You are trash. Just kidding.
We have to do all this legwork just to have Chromebooks play like basic games. I mean, if you had a real laptop, you wouldn't have to worry about that. But it is a cool thing. Game streaming on Chromebooks is something I've thought would be really interesting too, because if you have Xbox Game Pass, you could just like throw that in there and play your Xbox games from wherever.
I mean, obviously, streaming stuff is great, but it'll be interesting.
So your big thing is you're looking for one of these Chromebooks, Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've reviewed at least a couple of the ones that are supported, but I unfortunately do not have the hardware anymore, so I need to get one that I can try.
Okay, good luck with that. Updates for me. I'm working on writing up a review with of the Halo TV series, which I'm still kind of mixed on. I think it does some cool things, but yeah.
Has that series started? Is it?
It is starting on Friday.
Okay.
It is starting on Friday. I've seen the first 2 episodes. I'm also writing up a Gadget IRL, or a life experience with my Chrysler Pacifica 2018 hybrid. it started out being a very rosy story, and then Chrysler recalled the car, so now I can't charge the car, or the reason I bought that car. So it's gonna be it's gonna be a conflicting account of owning that thing. Still a nice car overall. So that'll probably be going up in the next few weeks, and I am just preparing to get out of here for a month or so to have a baby. That's a big job. That's a big thing I'm working on. Let's move on to our pop culture picks. Nate, I see what you have here, and I am not surprised.
Yes. Horizon Forbidden West. One of my favorite games of the last 10 years was Horizon Zero Dawn. I think that the story that they told there was just so fascinating. Really, really loved it. And so far, the sequel has not let me down at all. It looks wonderful. It's definitely one of the most gorgeous games I think you could play right now. I'm almost 60 hours into it. I'm not done. I'm not done yet. And it's great because I don't, there's the main quest sequence, which like, I want to know what's happening there, but it's one of those games where I fire it up and I'll start doing something and then just see something on the map or like out in the wilds and start to follow that. And just like, it picks up my curiosity and I go from there. And it reminds me a lot of Breath of the Wild in that way, where you might start out thinking you're going to do one thing and then go on a completely different journey. Yeah, I just love it. It's one of my favorite games.
Cool. I'm glad you're digging it, Nate. I wish the timing of the release of these games were better, because the first one came out like right alongside Breath of the Wild. I'm like, I'm gonna play freaking Zelda. Like, I'm gonna spend hundreds of hours in Zelda, and I never really went back to the last one, to Zero Dawn. And I started this one, and then like Elden Ring came out, and so many other games came out. I'm like, I'm gonna be wandering around.
Did you ever finish the first one?
I haven't finished it, but you know what? I'm like, I heard the plot was interesting, so I have seen some recaps. I know what happens. I think, okay, sure, like that is an interesting spin on a very familiar a sci-fi story. So I think it's interesting. I think it looks great. Playing the first couple of hours of this, I was like, you guys have not changed the controls at all. Like, Aloy still feels a little too big and clunky and stuff, but I'm intrigued. Like, if I ever have free time again in my life, I will probably go back into that. Right now, it's like the cosmic horrors of Elden Ring kind of have me hooked more. And I think I mentioned Tunic last week, which is on Game Pass right now. That is sort of like, I think you'd really like Tunic, Nate, because it's very like, it's a Zelda-like game. You're playing Fox with the sword. Nothing is like really, there's no like clarity about the world or how you do things, so it's a real sense of discovery game. I'm finding that really interesting compared to like Horizon and a lot of other games too, where they're like, this is how you do everything, this is how you use the weapons, this is your class system, these are all the systems, we're gonna spell it all out for you. But I will say that I think in Horizon, especially Forbidden West, the amount of like crafting and different weapons and armors and like play styles is much bigger than like their upgrade tree is huge, almost too big in my opinion, but you can really like, I think, find a way to play it that works for you, and it'd probably be totally different than the way someone else does. Like, I know somebody who says they mostly do melee instead of arrows, and I'm like, you're crazy, but like, hey, like, you do you. That is a game built around arrows too, and like being far away from things. But okay, I like I wish the traps were more interesting. I played around some of those. I don't really use the traps very much. It's a game with a lot of options. I do want to try Tunic though, so good call on that. I'm looking. Tunic is good. Tunic is good. Like, Elden Ring is all like, the world is terrible and these giant gods are trying to kill you, and Tunic's like, oh, cute fox, kill it. Like, it's still like very hard, but it is a nice change of pace. Shout out to, by the way, picks for me. I also want to reiterate that Our Flag Means Death, the HBO pirate show, is really good. It's in fact even better than the first couple episodes I talked about when last I mentioned it. I'm like, they're like 2 episodes away from the end now, so like the season came really quickly, and it's really funny, and it really matures within like 3 to 4 episodes. Like, Rhys Darby is a gem, and then Taika Waititi playing the legendary pirate Blackbeard appears, and just like, he is so good. He is incredible in the show. So I'd watch Taika Waititi in anything, but he is a co-creator of the show, co-producer, and he is just having a lot of fun in it. And it's also like, it's not a typical pirate story. It's about people like trying to learn to take care of each other and be emotionally mature and stuff. So it's very sweet, a lot of fun, a lot of like SNL comedy alum appearing in it too that I didn't expect. So It is real good. Check out Our Flag Means Death on HBO Max.
Is it a mini series or is it going to be an ongoing thing?
I don't know if it's ongoing, but it's a series, so the first season is gonna be finishing up soon.
But it's not specifically just like one season, like some other things.
They'll probably keep going. Like they have enough setup and characters where this could last a few seasons. Nice. Also want to shout out the movie After Yang, my favorite movie from Sundance. It is now streaming on Showtime, so go check it out if you have Showtime. It is worth. I don't think it's on VOD yet, so it is worth like doing a Showtime trial or something. I loved it. We just reviewed it on my movie podcast, the Filmcast. So I think it's a beautiful movie and everybody should read it. Everybody should watch it. Check out my review over Engadget as well. All right, let's wrap. Thanks for joining us, folks. Our theme music is by game composer Dale North. Our outro music is by our very own managing editor, Terrence O'Brien. The podcast is produced by Ben Ellman. You can find me online at Devindra on Twitter, and I podcast about movies and TV at the Filmcast, at thefilmcast.com. And where can we find you, Nate?
You can find me on Twitter at Nate Ingram. I tweet about stories I'm writing and other nonsense, and give me a follow if you want.
All right. And email us at podcast@engadget.com. Leave us a review on iTunes and subscribe on anything that gets podcasts. Thanks, folks. We're out. All right.
Okay. So we have a little bit of time to maybe talk to chat a little bit more. So some people have talked about Chromebooks and using Chromebooks, like suggesting Chromebooks for my traveling family. And I think I want to give them a little bit more ability to do different things.
You know,
even though Chromebooks are almost at parity with everything else now, I know.
Almost. Anybody who suggests a Chromebook should leave their contact information so the family can call you whenever they encounter situations where like it's not good enough.
I mean, I think that the Chromebook is a consideration if we're talking about budget constraints here, but if that wasn't something mentioned, so in that case, I would say
or like secondary computers, you know.
So the other thing is that, of course, like if you have family that's less tech savvy, you want to keep them inside a ecosystem that they're used to. And they're used to using Windows.
Yes.
I think they might be using like Windows 10 or something now.
Yeah. Don't rock the boat, people.
Yeah. That I agree. If you rock the boat too much, then you are responsible for helping them after saying, hey, this was so much better. And then they say like, hey, you said this was so much better, but like, where's my my stuff is not where I thought it was going to be.
Not working, and you have to handle all the calls basically. My main thing for IT advice, because I've had to do this for so long, is like focus on the thing that will do what they want, you know. And I realize I mentioned the hotspot here. You got to focus on what they want and not what like you think is necessarily best for you or best overall too. So, you know. It's just one of those things. You want to avoid the IT calls
for everything.
Yeah.
It's good life advice overall.
Good life advice. Look at some other questions here. Mark Dill's mentioning Tunic reminds him of Fez. I wish I liked Fez more. Fez was a really cool looking, had a great soundtrack thing, but I didn't like the puzzles. I didn't like the actual gameplay in Fez. So this kind of feels more
off it too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like I know people love it, but it didn't quite grab me.
I'm not big into like puzzle-y games, whereas this one's like straight up Zelda exploration, and there are secrets like in every corner of the world. Like for somebody like me, who I think my first like moment of joy with a game, or like a first like moment of like this is incredible, is when I discovered the warps, the like pipe warps in Mario 1. Nice. You know. I don't even remember like why I did it, but at one point I did it and like I was running around screaming and telling my parents everything. Like, look at this. If you could do that, anything is possible. It turns out that game has a lot of secrets that, you know,
I mean, teaches you. I think about the first game that really like blew me away was probably Link to the Past. I played a bunch of NES games, but when I got a Super Nintendo and got Link to the Past, like the sense of exploration and like the vast world there was so great. So if Tunic hits any of those same notes, I'm into it.
Oh, did you finish? Absolutely will. I've not finished Tunic. I never have time to finish any games. I play games.
Didn't you hear about the baby on the way?
Yeah, but it's not here yet. So
it's I already have a 3-year-old who's also
that's
taking
your
up
own
all my
fault,
other time.
Yeah, that's your own fault.
That's how it works, unfortunately.
I Do you know how much
But
time
yeah.
you put into it, ballpark?
I don't know, like 5-6 hours.
Okay.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
I like just wandering in it. Like I like a good wandering game like that. But it is funny, Nate. We can chart a direct line from Link to the Past to you loving the Horizon games too.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
it's perfect.
They are more Zelda-y than like I think I gave them credit for at first.
Yep.
So Mark Dale said something interesting in the chat. We were, talking more about Chromebook versus any kind of Windows laptop. Jiffer said recommending a Chromebook to someone is like telling a person who needs a phone to just buy an Apple Watch. And then Mark Dale said make sure you disable Windows 11 auto update. That specifically is something I want to spend more time on.
Probably
because I mean, Dev, didn't you say that like Windows updates in general were all you need in terms of cybersecurity? Because they were asking me about cybersecurity, and like their last understanding of cybersecurity is like McAfee, Norton, and so
you really don't need to deal with any of those things. Like to me, those
absolutely,
apps,
absolutely. So you said that the the regular Windows updates were absolutely good enough.
Your updates don't go downloading torrents. You know, if you go to the wasteland, if you start like messing around with stuff, then you're inviting.
If you roll around in the nuclear waste site, then don't be surprised when you walk away with Fallout.
Yeah,
exactly. Around and find out.
But yeah, the base like Windows stuff is good. Turning off auto updates is a good idea. But you still should do it. That doesn't mean don't do them, but it means like when you get to Wi-Fi, at least like a couple times a month, like see what your updates are. You know, do all those things.
Yes, all right.
But if you turn off auto updates, then then that means
you might
you're
rolling around.
You may forget. I think there's a way to turn off auto updates on metered connections. I think if you turn that on, there may be a way to control that. I'd have to look deeper into that though.
Well, this is the Ben tech support show after all, so I think you can like put that at the top of your list.
A lot of good questions.
Hey, I think this is a really interesting use case because
it is, and a lot more people want to do it too. Yeah. I mean, I'm tempted eventually. All right, folks. I think we can wrap it unless we see any good questions. Jiffer said he played and beat Breath of the Wild with his newborn sleeping on my chest, on his chest. That I did that with Red Dead Redemption 2. So newborns sleep a lot. So if you're actually up and able to like do the things to take care of them and just like give them a snuggle spot, then that's actually a good way to catch up on things.
Dev, do you think it's weird that I bounced off of RDR2?
I think it's very weird.
I think I should try it again.
I think you should try it again.
Yeah.
Do you have a PS5?
Yeah.
Did they ever update it with like better?
That I don't know, but I'll play it on whatever.
No. So when I played it was like on Xbox and like it had better HDR. Like it worked better than it did on PS4, I believe. So make sure the updates are good. But that is a game that requires some work, right? It starts slow. It's not like immediately grabby. It's not like here's plot, here's everything, here's like your goals. But once you get into that game, like I think it is a wonderful like place to just explore.
Yeah, I liked it from what I saw, but I guess I'm not as good with like super open world stuff. Like I wanted there to be some kind of clear
there is
or whatever.
There is. It's not like Elden Ring or the Souls games where you're just like I don't know. Go. Yeah. No. The Red Dead games, they take time, but the characters are great. The characters are so good. Rockstar characters I love.
Nice.
Okay.
Yep, I think we're done. So
thanks you so much,
everybody,
folks,
for watching. This stream comes to you via our video team, who is mostly consisted of, I think it's just Julio Barrientos today. Sometimes Luke Brooks is also around, but he might be
Brian
on vacation.
O on graphics. Hello. Yeah.
And thank you to the chat. You always make it more interesting. You remember stuff we forget. You make the conversations more detailed because we can't possibly know everything at all times. You help produce this in a small way, and I think that's really cool. If you've stuck around this long, rate the show on iTunes. You know that we live in a world of algorithms more than the average person, or better than the average person. So help other people find us. Rate us 5 stars on iTunes or any other podcast rating platform you can find. And if you just watched the stream, it'd be a good idea to maybe just download the episode. Yeah, you've heard it already,
Subscribe.
but like helps us, subscribe, auto download, helps us with some metrics, helps us report to the suits and the bean counters. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Later.
Thanks.